The rain poured down in relentless sheets, casting a somber mood over the quiet, gray cemetery. Mr. Robert, a 75-year-old millionaire, stood beside his wife's freshly covered grave, his heart heavier than it had felt in years. While Robert had everything a man could want in terms of wealth and accomplishments, he had lost the one person who truly understood him. The world around him now felt emptier, and he couldn't shake the sense that he had run out of time to fix past mistakes. As the last of the mourners departed, Robert lingered, unwilling to leave. It was then he noticed a young man standing off to the side, drenched yet motionless, watching him with an intensity that felt both intrusive and familiar. The young man seemed hesitant, clutching something tightly in his hand, his eyes never leaving Robert. Finally, the young man approached, his movements careful, almost as if he feared he might scare Robert away. "Mr. Robert," he began, his voice low yet clear. "My name is Alex. I believe I'm your grandson." Robert's face, already creased with grief, now showed hints of confusion and suspicion. He didn't have any grandchildren. He barely had a family left. "I don't have any grandchildren," he replied curtly, though the words stung as they left his mouth. His relationship with his only child, a daughter, had been fraught with misunderstandings and bitter arguments before she disappeared from his life years ago. He had never made amends, and she had never returned. But the young man, Alex, didn't retreat. "Your daughter, my mother, she spoke of you even though she couldn't be close to you. I came here to pay respects to my grandmother, whom I never got the chance to meet. I thought you should know." Robert was frozen, struck by a torrent of emotions. Shock, sorrow, and a pang of anger that someone would intrude on his grief like this. But as he looked closer at Alex, he caught a glimpse of something familiar in the young man's face, a resemblance that he couldn't deny. The possibility that this could be real stirred something long buried within him. "Why now?" Robert's voice was low, his tone both a question and a challenge. Alex hesitated, as if unsure of how much to reveal. "I only found out about you recently, after my mother passed. I wanted to find out more, to understand where I come from, to meet the family I never knew." The words hung in the damp air, and Robert's heart twisted at the thought. If what Alex said was true, he was facing a link to a family he thought lost forever. Yet the idea of believing this stranger felt too risky. He'd been through too much to take people at face value, but there was an undeniable pull toward knowing more. Robert, still guarded, gave a slow nod. "We'll see," he muttered, unable to commit but unable to fully turn away either. As he left the cemetery, Alex's words echoed in his mind, awakening long-buried memories and sparking a question he hadn't considered in years. Was it possible to rebuild the bridges he had burned, even this late in life? The following day, Robert sat in his study, his mind swirling with thoughts of Alex and the unexpected claim he had made. The young man's face, so earnest, so certain, had stirred memories Robert thought he had buried for good. He looked across the room at the few framed photos he had left of his daughter, Lydia. Her smile held a spark of rebellion and independence, traits that had driven a wedge between them as she grew older. She had wanted a different life, one that didn't align with the family legacy or the weight of his expectations. Even now, Robert could recall their last argument, the echo of angry words bouncing off the walls before she left and never returned. He had waited years for her to reach out, to reconcile, but she had stayed away, leaving him with only regrets. Robert shook his head, trying to dismiss the creeping thoughts of, what if Alex was truly her son? What if Lydia had found a life outside of his control but never found the courage to return? His musings were interrupted by a gentle knock on the study door. When he looked up, his longtime housekeeper, Margaret, stood there, her expression one of concern and curiosity. "Are you all right, Mr. Robert?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. Margaret had been with the family since before Lydia was born. She had seen the best and worst of times in this house. "I had a visitor yesterday at the cemetery," Robert replied, keeping his gaze on the photos. "A young man named Alex, who claims to be my grandson." Margaret's eyes widened. "A grandson?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how?" "He says he's Lydia's son. Apparently, she never told him about me, or about her life before she left." Robert's voice faltered as he spoke, the words feeling strange and heavy. "He only found out after she passed away. He came here looking for answers." Margaret was silent, clearly taken aback. After a moment, she spoke, "And do you believe him, sir?" Robert felt the weight of her question. He wasn't sure if it was fear, disbelief, or perhaps even hope that was keeping him from accepting the truth. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to believe it. Part of me is too afraid to even try." Margaret nodded, understanding his hesitation. Maybe you should give him a chance, Mr. Robert. If he really is Lydia's son, perhaps this is your chance to reconnect with her." In a way, Robert mulled over her words, feeling the familiar ache of unresolved regret. His daughter had left a void he had never managed to fill, and if Alex was truly her son, this might be his last opportunity to mend what he had broken. The thought brought a faint glimmer of hope, mingled with fear. That afternoon, he arranged a meeting with Alex at a quiet cafe in town. He arrived early, his nerves sharper than he cared to admit. As he waited, he tried to prepare himself for the possibility that this young man could be a fraud, an opportunist hoping to prey on his wealth. Yet, as soon as Alex walked in, Robert found himself questioning his own suspicions. The young man's demeanor was modest, his clothing worn but neat, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and quiet resolve. "Thank you for meeting me," Alex said as he took a seat across from Robert. He offered a tentative smile, one that hinted at Lydia's rebellious charm. Robert nodded, his voice steady but guarded. "I thought it was worth hearing you out. If you are who you say you are, this isn't a small matter." Over the next few weeks, Robert and Alex began to form a tentative routine of shared dinners and late-night conversations, building a foundation that neither had anticipated. Robert took quiet joy in learning about Alex's life, the long nights working as a musician, his dream of one day composing his own music, and the memories he held of his mother, Lydia. One evening, as they shared a meal at a cozy Italian restaurant, Alex spoke up. "You know, it's strange," he began, looking thoughtful. "Growing up, I thought I'd never know where I came from. And now that I'm here, talking to you, it feels like I have a history I'd only imagined." Robert smiled, the warmth in his eyes reflecting the pride he felt. "You have more of a history than you realize, Alex. There's so much of your mother in you, her resilience, her passion. And I want you to know, you're not just a part of my past. You're my family now." Alex nodded, visibly moved, but hesitated. "I think that's what I've wanted for a long time. But there's something I need to ask. Why did she leave? Why did she feel like she couldn't stay?" Robert's expression darkened as he reflected on the difficult memories, but he nodded, understanding that Alex deserved the truth. "When Lydia was young, I was different, too focused on building my business and creating a legacy. I didn't realize until it was too late that the price I paid was distance from my own family. By the time I tried to make amends, she was already gone. She needed something I couldn't give back then. Freedom, I think." Alex listened intently, absorbing the vulnerability in his grandfather's words. "So, in a way, we're both looking for a fresh start," he murmured, a hint of hope softening his voice. "Maybe we can do that together." Robert smiled, sensing a new bond taking shape, one built on mutual understanding and a shared commitment to the future. "I'd like that very much, Alex. And for what it's worth, I'll do whatever it takes to be here for you, to be the family I couldn't be for your mother." That night marked a turning point. For the first time, Robert felt the weight of his regrets lifting, replaced by the hope of a future filled with second chances. And as they left the restaurant, A quiet understanding passed between them, a promise to face the challenges ahead together. Not long after their heartfelt conversation, Robert invited Alex to his estate for the weekend, a place steeped in memories that had once felt like chains. The grand rooms, the meticulously curated gardens, and the walls adorned with portraits of long-gone relatives painted a picture of a life that now felt incomplete without Alex's presence. As they strolled through the garden, Robert paused by a small stone bench overlooking the rose bushes. He gestured for Alex to sit beside him, his gaze distant. "This estate has been in the family for generations," Robert began, his voice soft. "But for so long, I thought it meant nothing without someone to share it with." Alex looked around, taking in the sweeping lawns and the elegance that surrounded them. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely, "but I can see why it might feel empty." Robert nodded, a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. "I poured everything into this legacy, hoping it would speak for me when I was gone. But seeing you here, I realize I'd trade every material possession to have spent those years with Lydia." The vulnerability in Robert's words struck a chord with Alex, who placed a reassuring hand on his grandfather's shoulder. "Maybe it's not too late to fill it with memories that mean something," Alex suggested gently. "For both of us." As they continued their walk, Alex noticed an old, framed photograph hanging near the library door. A young woman with Robert, her eyes sparkling with the same determination Alex saw in himself. "Is that my mom?" he asked quietly. Robert nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at the image. "That was taken just after her high school graduation. She was so full of life and dreams, many of which I never got to hear about." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words. "Tell me more about her," Alex said, his voice filled with curiosity and a tinge of sadness. "I'd like to know the woman she was before I came along." With each story Robert shared, of Lydia's stubborn resolve, her love for music, and her laughter that could fill a room, Alex felt as though he were discovering a part of himself. And for Robert, these stories provided a path to redemption, a way to honor his daughter's memory by sharing it with the grandson he had only just met. That night, as they sat in the library surrounded by memories and mementos, Alex reached for the piano in the corner. "This was her piano, wasn't it?" he asked, his fingers grazing the keys. Robert nodded, the bittersweet look in his eyes unmistakable. "Yes, she used to play for hours, even when I was too busy to listen." Alex sat down, and as his fingers moved over the keys, a familiar melody filled the room, one he had heard only in fragments from old recordings. Robert listened in awe as his grandson brought Lydia's favorite song back to life, the notes weaving their way through the past and into the present, connecting them in a way neither had thought possible. By the time the last note faded, Robert's eyes were bright with tears. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of regret overshadowed by the warmth of a newfound bond, a bond that had somehow transformed the pain of his past into a future worth hoping for. As dawn filtered through the grand windows of Robert's estate, Alex wandered into the library, drawn to the familiar leather-bound volumes and dust-laden shelves. He found himself exploring more of the family's history, his mother's history, pieces he hadn't known existed. In a quiet corner, tucked within an old chest, he noticed a small stack of letters bound by a worn ribbon. Curiosity piqued. He carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. Its edges frayed and ink faded with time. The words spilled out like confessions, each line revealing Lydia's innermost thoughts, written during a time when her relationship with her father was strained beyond repair. In her letters, she described her yearning for freedom, the weight of expectations she felt, and the regret she harbored for leaving without a goodbye. As Alex read, he realized these weren't just ordinary letters. They were unsent messages, written with hope that someday they'd bridge the chasm between father and daughter. In one of the final letters, Lydia wrote, "Dad, I know you may never understand why I had to go, but even though I left, part of me never stopped hoping you'd reach out. that maybe you'd try to find me. I just wanted you to see me for who I really am." Alex's hands shook as he finished reading. The weight of his mother's unspoken words hung heavy in the air, and he understood the depth of her loneliness, her desire for her father's acceptance. A feeling he could now see reflected in Robert's regret. Just as he was lost in thought, Robert entered the room, pausing as he noticed the letters in Alex's hands. An expression of quiet recognition crossed his face. "I'd nearly forgotten about those," Robert murmured, his voice filled with sorrow. "After Lydia left, I found her letters hidden in her room. I couldn't bring myself to read them all these years. The pain was too raw." Alex handed one of the letters to Robert, his voice soft. "She never stopped wanting to be a part of your life. She just needed to know you cared about her. Not the future you'd planned, but her dreams, her choices." Robert took the letter, the words sinking in as he read them. His face reflected a lifetime of missed chances, yet also a glimmer of something else, hope. "I thought I was doing what was best," he whispered, voice trembling. "But I see now, I only pushed her away." The silence stretched between them, heavy yet healing, as they sat together in the quiet. Slowly, Robert raised his eyes to Alex, determination hardening his gaze. "I can't change the past, Alex, but I want to do right by you. I want to know who you are, what you care about, and to support you. Just as I should have with Lydia." Alex's heart swelled with gratitude. "That's all I could ever ask for." Together, they began to piece through the letters, revisiting Lydia's words, her life, and the dreams she'd held close. In those hours, they bridged not only the divide between past and present, but began to forge a new bond, honoring Lydia's memory by letting her words bring them closer together. In the days that followed, Robert and Alex grew into an unspoken understanding. Their conversations stretched longer, touching on Robert's business ventures, his successes, and his regrets, and Alex's experiences, his plans, and the quiet dreams he rarely shared. Each discussion deepened their relationship, bridging past and present through their shared ties to Lydia. One afternoon, as they walked the estate gardens together, Robert paused by a marble fountain Lydia had adored as a child. The sound of the water and the cool shade created a reflective atmosphere, a place Lydia often went to think and sketch. "This was always your mother's favorite spot," Robert said, his voice gentle, tinged with nostalgia. "She had this vision, one I never understood when she was alive, of beauty in small things. I was too focused on building a legacy to recognize it." "Maybe that's part of the legacy, though," Alex replied. "It's what made her who she was." Robert nodded slowly. "I think she wanted to build something different from my empire. Maybe something simpler, but no less important." As they walked, Alex felt compelled to share a realization that had been forming in him. "I was angry too, at how things turned out. How it felt like she had to hide a part of herself just to keep peace with her family." Robert sighed. "I can't change what I did then, but I can support what you decide to pursue now, Alex. I want to be part of your future, whatever that means for you." With a small smile, Alex felt the final pieces click into place. He no longer felt like a stranger, like an outsider looking into a life he could never belong to. "There is one thing that might honor her memory," he suggested. "Something to do with her art, with her vision of finding beauty in the world." Robert's eyes softened with understanding. "A foundation, perhaps? Something that can help young artists, people who might not have had the support Lydia wanted but never received." "That sounds perfect," Alex agreed. "I could help lead it, shape it into something she would have been proud of." In that moment, Robert reached out, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder with a fatherly warmth Alex hadn't anticipated. "Thank you, Alex. Not just for bringing her memory back to life, but for letting me be a part of this, for letting me be family." As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the estate, Alex realized how profoundly his life had changed. He had arrived as a young man with questions about his family, unsure if he'd find answers or acceptance. Now he had found both, along with a path forward that would honor Lydia's memory and reshape Robert's legacy. They stood together, looking over the gardens Lydia had once loved, united not just by blood, but by the shared promise of new beginnings and the legacy of love that bound them all. Several months passed, and the vision Alex and Robert had discussed was becoming a reality. Together, they established the Lydia Foundation for the Arts, an organization dedicated to supporting young artists from underprivileged backgrounds. It was Alex's passion project, something he took on wholeheartedly, seeing it as a way to keep his mother's spirit alive. On the foundation's opening day, the halls of the newly renovated art center buzzed with life. Paintings lined the walls, sculptures filled the rooms, and a mix of guests, young artists, patrons, and the press, filled the space. Alex watched the people filtering in, seeing hope and excitement in their expressions. The same emotions had filled him when he first uncovered the truth about his family, and now he could share that sense of belonging with others. Robert arrived early and walked through the halls slowly, absorbing every detail. He found Alex near a display dedicated to Lydia, which included a few of her sketches and a poignant note about her dreams for the foundation. Robert's gaze lingered on one particular sketch, a small drawing of a garden fountain, surrounded by flourishing roses, a place for peace and reflection. "You've done her justice, Alex," Robert said, his voice a mixture of pride and quiet humility. "She would have loved this." Alex smiled, feeling the weight of the journey they had taken together. "I think she'd have been proud of both of us." As the ceremony began, Robert took the stage, delivering a heartfelt speech about his daughter's vision, her love for art, and the inspiration she brought to both their lives. He spoke of mistakes, of lessons learned too late but never forgotten. And he ended with a powerful acknowledgement of Alex, whom he called the heart of the foundation. "We all have regrets," Robert said, his voice cracking just slightly. "But it's never too late to honor those we've loved and lost by making sure their dreams live on. And today, I am grateful to my grandson, who reminded me of that." The room filled with applause, and as Robert stepped down, he gave Alex a rare, genuine smile, a gesture that sealed their bond in a way words couldn't. After the event, Alex and Robert walked out to the garden, both feeling a sense of peace and renewal. The legacy they had started wasn't just a testament to Lydia's memory, but a promise to each other. A promise to build a future rooted in understanding, compassion, and family. Grandfather and felt the full weight of the journey they'd taken together. They had confronted secrets, bridged generations, and created something beautiful from the trials of the past. For the first time, Alex knew he was home, not just in a place but in the family he'd always yearned for. And as they walked back inside, Alex and Robert both felt Lydia's presence with them, a guiding light that would forever illuminate their path forward. If you loved this story of family and transformation, don't forget to tap the card above to explore more like it. Make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. I love reading them.